Hi, welcome to this code lab on SK-FAPS. So SK-FAPS is a open source CRM written using the SvelteKit, Fast API, Alembic, PostgreSQL, and SQL model stack. And we're going to be building this CRM. So let's get started. Just as an introduction, SvelteKit is a really fast and lightweight front-end framework, and Fast API is a really modern Python framework, and Postgres is a fast and reliable database. SQL model, also written by Sebastian Ramirez, is a ORM which is compatible with Fast API, and they all work nicely together. So let's take a look at the steps. So first of all, we're going to clone the branch step 1 from our repo here. So the repo here has a main branch but also the step 1 branch. So we're going to clone the step 1 branch. I already have it here. So now we can initialize our virtual environment. So to initialize our virtual environment, I can create a folder, or I can first switch to the app folder and then create the virtual environment using Python 3-m venv my venv. So that's created. Now we can go on to the next step, which is to activate the virtual environment. So I'll go ahead and activate. The next step is to install the requirements and dependencies. So first let's check to see what's in the requirements file. So these are all the dependencies and requirements. So let's go ahead and install them. And before I do, I'm going to deactivate my Conda environment because it might interfere with the Python 3 virtual environment. So now that's deactivated. Now I can install the requirements. So now those requirements are installed. I can now go on to install the main.py or initialize main.py. So main.py here would basically be pretty simple, and I'll just walk through what that looks like. So we have so in main.py we basically have all our imports up here. Then we initialize our app using the Fast API constructor. Then we add our middleware and we create the origins array. Then we initialize the startup event with our function on startup. Then in our admin auth class, we're declaring what we need for admin auth, and then we declare our user admin and post admin, and we add them to the admin object. And finally we have these routes which we'll add later. So let's keep going. We want a crm.db file that's going to store our database. So let's create a crm.db. Now we can create our database.py, which is a configuration for the database. So let's go ahead and do that. So our database.py is actually pretty simple. It has a SQL Alchemy URL which points to our CRM DB that we created. It initializes the engine object and uses the SQLite URL for that. Here we have our SQL Alchemy database URL, which we can comment out for now because we would be using it once we initialize our Postgres DB. Right now we just need the SQLite URL. Then we have our create DB and tables function, and we have our get session function. So we also have a get DB function. So these three functions are used later, and we'll go over those later. So let's keep going. We have models.py. So let's create models.py. So for models.py, we just need two models right now. The models.py is going to use SQL model as the base model. So let me explain what that means. SQL model is essentially like a pedantic modeling or validation method. So it uses SQL model as the base model, and to check the documentation for SQL model, we can actually just go over here and click on that. So this has links to Fast API and SQL model. And if we go down here to SQL model, there's a ton of documentation about how the SQL model ORM works. So we can always go back to that documentation later. Let's close that out for now. So now we need our models class, which has our user model and it has post model. The remaining models, which are user create, user read, user update, they're used for specific use cases like the CRUD operations. So we can always go with that later. Similarly for post, we have our base class, which is a Python data class, and then we have our read, create classes and update class for CRUD operations. So we also have post read with user and user read with post. So these we'll go over later. We have three more data classes. One is login, one is token, one is token data. Again, these are used for authentication, and we can go over them in detail later. Okay, so now we have main.py, we have our crmdb, we have database.py, and we have our models.py. So let's go ahead and create oauth.py. So for oauth.py, we're going to use that for login, getting the OAuth token, which is going to be a JWT token. So now we can create our .env file. So the .env file contains our database credentials. For now, we are using SQLite, so we're not directly using these credentials right now. So we'll use them later when we switch to our Postgres DB. Now we need a hashing.py file. The hashing.py basically just uses bcrypt to hash the password for security, and we can use the bcrypt and the verify methods to hash and to verify the password. Now we need a route called router, or a folder called router, and this folder is going to have a few files. So first we'll create a dunder init.py, the double underscore init double underscore .py, which is also known as dunder init.py because it's a double underscore which is abbreviated as dunder. So let's keep going. Now we can have a post.py. The post.py is going to have the functions which are called for CRUD operations on post object. So if we switch to the router and create post.py, we can have the CRUD operations for post over there. So this is pretty straightforward. It has create post, read posts, read one post, so it has create post, read posts, read one post, update post, and delete post. And these functions are pretty straightforward. They're using a decorator, which is a fast API decorator for the routes. So slash posts here, slash posts with a dot get here, dot get, and slash post ID here. And update post also has patch as the verb, and the delete post has delete as the verb. So similar to post.py, we have user.py, and we also have authentication.py. So the authentication creates a login function, and this login function will return an access token, which is a JWT token. Now if we go to access token.py, we can create access. So this is going to be in our app folder. We can create access token.py, and this is going to contain a few functions for creating and verifying the access token, and it uses a library called Python Jose. So here we are importing Jose JWT error and JWT, and it creates access token and it verifies the access token. For generating the secret key, we have a function called rand, which is OpenSSL rand hex 32, and whatever that generates is what we copy in to our secret key constant. So we can paste it in there. Now we can run our app. So when we run this, it should give us the API. So let's okay, so it's saying that there's no module called OAuth2. So I think we made an error here. We called it OAuth.py. We should be calling it OAuth2. So let's fix that. And now it reloads and should give us the welcome for the routes, or the welcome route. And now if we go to docs, we can see that we have all the endpoints, including post and login. And let's see if our user routes are also here. Now here it says delete user is not working, so let's just double check that. Oh, so we made a mistake and we added the wrong lines here in the user.py. So user.py should have user values. So let's fix that. So here we added the user routes, the user cred operations, and I'll fix that in this file as well. So in our user.py, we can change the file to use our user.py routes. And if we look at our API, we should be able to see the routes for both user and for our posts. And let's attempt to create a post. Before we create a post, we have to create a user. So let's just create one here. We'll call this one chat GPT at chatgpt.com. Password 123. Execute. And it created the user and returned the user object. So now we can create a post, but first we have to log in to this because it's a authenticated route. So we can say chat gpt at chatgpt.com, and Here we have to use the email because even though it says username, we are looking for email in our code, and the password is password 123. So let's authorize that. Now it's authorized, and the lock comes on here. Now we can create a post. So let's create a post by saying hello to AI from chat GPT, and the author ID can be whatever the author ID was for the user that was created, which was 1. So here we can say 1, execute, and this creates this post. And here it says the ID is null, but that's probably a minor issue. We could create another one here. Yeah, so we have 2 posts now, and we can do a read. So when we do a read on the post, we get both posts back, and both of them have an ID. So that's fine. And we can also go to admin here. So if we go to admin, and let's say we log out and we start with login, ChatGPT at chatgpt.com, password 123, login, we'll find that we have our ChatGPT user here. We can always edit it here, and we should see our posts here as well. So we have the author, ChatGPT authoring both these posts. So pretty much we have our full stack CRM, at least the foundations of it built out. And we'll see you in the next part where we're going to do migrations using Alembic. So see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.